I couldn't believe what I'd just witnessed. Atop a great cliff, I'm sure I'd just seen Kazuya Mishima toss his own father, Heihachi, over the edge. I'd been out birdwatching in the valley, you see, and thought I might glimpse an eagle high up on the rocky outcrop, so I'd fixed my binoculars up there. They've a powerful zoom, but surely I hadn't just seen a murder, a patricide even. I'd heard there was no love lost between the father and son duo, and had even heard rumours that Heihachi had once thrown his son from that cliff. But that was just a legend, right? No one could possibly survive that fall. I remained transfixed, totally shook by what I was nearly convinced I had seen. Should I call the police? I should confirm the worst first, right? I resolved to find the body and started hiking through the forest. It would take me a few hours, but I should make it before nightfall. Honestly, the zoom on my binoculars really is something. I can see for miles and miles, and, well, I really don't like the Who, so I'm going to stop that there. When I finally broke free of the tree line, the sky had turned really dark. There was no body lying on the ground, but to be honest, I could have got turned around some in the trees, and from that height, I looked up at the rock face and, whoa, lightning lit up the sky and illuminated a figure. I grabbed my binoculars to try and get a better look. I was almost certain it was one of the men I'd seen earlier, but the one who was thrown, it couldn't be. Was it really Heihachi Mishima, free climbing the... Hey, how'd I get here? Looking down on a busy city, I think I just saw Jun Kazama in the crowd when all of a sudden I was transported to a ranch, or maybe a reservation or something. An angry lady smashed a mirror inside a small house and then... Wait, no, I remember now. This is just the opening cutscene to Tekken 2, my favourite video game intro of all time. I have so much nostalgia for that game, and the music on that intro is one of my top 3 audios, right up there with the internet dial-up tone and the original PlayStation startup sound. But hey, listen, if Kazuya had just got done throwing his father off a cliff, I'm sure the next thing he'd want to do would be to direct your attention to the podcast episode description where you'll find all my socials. Oh yeah, this is the Off the Rails podcast, by the way, and I'm the offrailgamer. I probably should have opened with that. And then I need to talk about what happened 2 weeks ago. See, I had the podcast recorded, but I was totally swamped in my day job and just couldn't find the time to complete the edit. So that episode went up last week instead. Now, in order to get our schedule back on track, I'm posting this episode just 1 week later. I'm sorry that this happened, and I hope you can find it in your big heart to forgive me. Listen, it's time for me to tell you about what I've been playing recently. So let's do that, shall we? So here's the thing. I've been getting into a game that I've always struggled with in the past. It's super popular, but I just never knew what I was doing. It's not a new game, and to really give it away, I'll tell you what it's been likened to, which is effectively virtual Lego for adults. Only there are Lego video games which are for everyone, big and small, so I'll just come right out and say it. I've been getting into Minecraft. I'm still really new to it, and therefore my skill is definitely limited to say the least, but I'm finally starting to understand its popularity. I started out trying to play with friends in a server, but everyone else was like a Minecraft grandmaster compared to me, so I decided to create a peaceful world in which I could at least get to grips with the crafting basis, the idea being that I would hop back in with my pals once I'd gained some confidence. But the challenge would still be very real, as I would only have a limited time to try and craft a chest to store my inventory, so I hopefully wouldn't lose everything when night falls and the creepers and such come and kill me. My goodness, those guys really have my number. Though I will not give up. And who knows, maybe soon I'll even be able to contribute a mega structure, the likes of which my comrades have already been working on. I have a game plan. I'm going to need a crafting table, then a chest. Then I must build a shelter and a bed, and then and only then will I try to construct something cool. I've also been jumping back into Cities Skylines, which is pretty much my go-to, well, that and Stardew Valley, when I want to play something to unwind and relax. There's something wholly pleasant in watching your city grow whilst attempting to meet the few challenges and keeping your residents happy. I've also been watching YouTube tutorials and playthroughs in an effort to continue to improve my zoning and traffic so I don't end up with huge queues of lorries trying to leave my city. I've gone very quiet online lately, due primarily to a hectic schedule at work and feeling just too exhausted in the evenings and at the weekends to do anything much. To anyone this has affected, I sincerely apologise and I hope to get back to a regular schedule soon. I think I just needed a bit of a break. Not much in the way of gaming news this week besides a fix looking to be put in to resolve a number of bugs in Sims 4 following the release of the in-game Tinder app I spoke about last week. Therefore, I figured we'd go back through time with some On This Day in Gaming History. So, what were gamers up to on the 8th of August in years gone by? Well, Visco Corporation was established in 1983. You may remember them for such games as 1999's Captain Tomaday on the Sega Dreamcast or Elan on PSP and PlayStation 3. Or, like me, you may have no recollection of this company or any of the games that they put out. Sorry, Visco, I'll have to find out if these titles are worth a look. The United States of America got a DOS release of Ball Race in 1988. The name of the game speaks for itself as players controlled a ball in a race against other balls. The objective was to maintain higher speeds by avoiding obstacles littering the course. Jump forward just 2 years, and Japanese gamers were getting their hands on Street Fighter 2010 The Final Fight. This 1990 prediction thankfully didn't come to pass because, as we now know, the Street Fighter cast was still duking it out last year, a whole 13 years on. Whizzing through the years, let's stop next in 2002, when the US and Canada were gifted Farscape the game. This was a tie-in with the TV series which I happened to enjoy back in the day. I've never had this game in my collection, but now that I know of its existence, I might see if a PAL version can be obtained for a reasonable sum. Though after a brief scan online, it looks like that's a no. We here in the UK were treated to Aliens vs Predator Extinction on PS2 in 2003. Another game I've never played, but I remember fans of the two franchises were disappointed with the movie. It was what it was. In 2005, Cheshire got a Windows release of Heavyweight Thunder. The lucky so-and-sos. I'm assuming this was a boxing game. The cover art suggests it was. And Cheshire also got Pop Life the same year. It looks a bit like Sims from the screenshots I've seen, only the game seems to be focused around making music, which makes sense given the title. 2008 brought The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor to the UK on PS2. As a kid, I'd loved the first two Mummy films, and I remember seeing this film, for which this game was a tie-in, in the cinema, but that's pretty much all I remember of it. With the game selling for nearly £20 on eBay, I can't see myself putting myself through the misery of seeing what it was all about. Here's one that surprised me at how old it is now. Papers, Please was released all the way back in 2013. Where have the last 11 years gone? For anyone who hasn't come across this one, you play as an immigration officer in a fictional Soviet-esque country, checking passports against a list of prohibited criteria. It was quite fun, so check it out. And on 8th of August 2017, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice was released on PS4 in the US. And I really must get round to playing this now 7-year-old game. That's enough for this segment, I reckon. Let's hop into the main event. Right, please bear with me this week, as I've no real overarching topic for you to hold everything together. I have some games I want to chat about in no particular order, and I'm pretty much just going to ramble on until I run out of steam. I'll try and put some structure back into the next episode. When I was a teen, I went round a mate's house and he was just finishing up a campaign in one of the Age of Empires games. Now, I thought it looked pretty good, but he was playing it on PC, and I was a console gamer. Nevertheless, sometime later I was browsing the shelves in-game and found Age of Empires 2 The Age of Kings on PS2. So I took it up to the counter, paid for it, and took it home. And what can I say? There went my summer. Seriously, I sank so many hours into this game playing as different civilizations in Sandbox, racing to make sure I had at least one relic held in my church, popping up castle walls with a portcullis around my town, and building up my naval fleet to attack enemy coastal settlements with Greek fire. And being a real nerd with an interest in history, I loved the pages they'd included detailing the civilizations you could play as in the game, and the technology they gave the world. I remember learning about the Byzantine Empire from the game. Not something we would cover at school. Resource management in AoE sometimes forces you to choose between building upgrades and military strength, though you can't always have the latter without the former. But sending your villagers too far from home to mine a stone or gold deposit could leave them vulnerable to attack from enemy scouts. I really think this was an excellent port of the game, as evidenced by the amount of time I lost to it back in the day. I tried the remaster released a couple of years ago, which for me didn't hold up very well at all, but that hasn't altered my opinion on this classic title in the slightest. As a little lad, I briefly thought I'd be getting into football, of the soccer variety. Way back on the PS1 I used to play FIFA 99, which is a gem of a game really. I used to love setting up friendlies, although I didn't used to play all that friendly, as you could choose the stadium, length of each half, and even what the weather would be doing for the duration. Now bear in mind I was a small boy with no real interest in sport. Still, it was with some shame looking back that it was years of playing the game before I realised there was a season mode. Up until that point, I'd pretty much just been setting up the matches I wanted to see. Now I'm pretty sure it was Dennis Bergkamp on the cover art in his Arsenal kit, but then load the game up and the intro animation was of David Ginola, the Nescafe guy, training for his club Tottenham Hotspur. And as I said, I've no real interest in the beautiful game, but aren't those two teams bitter rivals? Just what were you trying to stir up, EA? Anyway, I used to love playing as Chelsea and seeing how quickly I could get Dennis Wise sent off for some foul play. It felt like more of a simulation then. And there, a little bit of banter about players from close to 30 years ago now. That's pretty much all I can tell you about the sport of football. I did get a kick out of FIFA 99 though, and that memory popped into my head, so I talked at you about it for a little while. I guess what I'm trying to do is talk about games that I don't bring up all the time, and maybe that's the theme of this week's episode, but honestly, I'm just rambling about whatever games come to mind. And next, my brain is taking us to the Xbox 360 with an indie game called Avatar Drop. This was a quirky little game in which you directed your free-falling avatar through a series of varying-sized metal rings and big bouncy balls in a race for the finish. Reaching the bottom first wasn't the way to win though. You racked up points by passing through the metal rings, earning a higher score for clearing the smaller ones. But don't get left too far behind, or your avatar will plummet down the screen to catch up with the others, which will likely mean you'll miss out on opportunities to improve your score along the way. But why am I telling you this? Well, it's true to say that around 10 to 12 years ago I downloaded this from Xbox Live and just fell in love with it. Its jaunty music and the audible hollers of avatars as they fell, Avatar Drop just tickled me right. Here's a game and a half for you, and keep in mind how much I love on-rail shooters, so I guess I was bound to land on one at some point. Now, I never owned this one as a kid, but I did add it to my collection as a man full grown, and I think I can assume that I would have played a lot of it when I was super young. And before I tell you what it was, I'll give you a clue in saying that I have covered it over on YouTube, so the real fans among you have probably worked out what I'm going to talk about. But now, a quick word from our sponsor. No, don't worry, I haven't got any sponsors. I'm talking about Rescue Shot. The game's central character, Bo, is absent-mindedly strolling through the game world, utterly oblivious to the threats around him. So it's your job as the player to shoot obstacles and dangers out of the way so he may carry on in his stupor. I remember shooting Bo in the back of the head will make him fall down, which may be useful in dodging aerial assaults, though I cannot confirm with absolute certainty. And I think you can also make him hop over things by shooting at his feet. It's a fun, brightly coloured game that certainly isn't punishing in its difficulty, but it is fun to stick on, especially with the GunCon peripheral. I've talked about Theme Park on PlayStation before now, but there's a game I haven't really mentioned before. On PS2, thinking it would be essentially a modernisation of Theme Park, I picked up Roller Coaster World, and my initial impression was that of disappointment. It's much more of a management simulation game opposed to the more humorous Bullfrog title. Having said that, I did love the graphics at the time. I'm sure they're all polygonal and blurry by today's standards, but it was good for the time. And you could do some neat things in terms of roller coaster construction design. For example, you could build a wooden roller coaster, which wasn't compatible with loopity-loops and such, but you could have it pass under its own track and even tunnel underground to make it more exciting for park visitors. It's perhaps not the greatest game in the world, but now that I've thought of it again, part of me wants to fire it up. And guys, unfortunately time has got the better of me this week, so I'm going to have to keep it short. Sorry if this week's episode was a bit of a weird one. I hope to be better prepared in 2 weeks' time when we meet again. Until then, adios!